Shalom Aleichem, Likutei Sichos, volume 20, the first Sicha on Vayera. The Sicha is based on the famous story of the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Chabad Rebbe, when he was a child of 4 or 5 years old. And he went into his grandfather, the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe, on the occasion of his own birthday. His birthday is Chav Cheshvan, which usually falls in during the week of the portion of Vayera. And as the little boy walked through his Zayd's room, he started to cry. The Zaydi asked him, "Why are you crying?" And he explained, "I'm crying because I learned in the portion of the week, Vayera, that Vayera, I love Hashem, that Hashem appeared to Abraham. And I'm crying, why did not Hashem appear to me? To which the Tzemach Tzedek answered that when a righteous person, a tzaddik, is 99 years old and he's prepared to go through circumcision, he is worthy of the revelation of Hashem." That's the story. The story, the Rabbi discusses it in numerous sichos. Incidentally, the Rabbi explains in other places that this is not just about the fact that he was 99 and prepared to circumcise. The Rabbi, in I believe the first volume of the Likutei Sichos, and it's noted in one of the footnotes here, explains it on another level as well, that 99 represents almost perfection. If there's 10 emotions, 10 sefirot in a person's soul, and each one includes all 10, so 99 means he's almost at perfection, and yet he's prepared to, quote, circumcise, which represents to completely transform himself and recognize that he can grow much more so, what have you. That triggers a revelation. But anyway, this is nominally a Rashi Sicha, which is so special. This is a story of a Rebbe as a 4-year-old child. And our Rebbe, to him, this is something that you can discuss on a pshat level, and the Rebbe finds questions and answers within the verbiage of Chumash and Rashi to explain what happened. So this is why this Sikha is very fascinating to me. So firstly, the Rebbe asks a basic question. Why is it that this child, the Rebbe Rashab, at 4 or 5 years old, is crying because of the verse in today's portion, which speaks about godly revelation to Abraham, when he already had twice in last week's portion that Hashem revealed to Abraham? Twice in last week's portion does it say, Vayera Hashem el Avram. God revealed himself to Abraham. That's the Rebbe's question. I'm going to bring up a little chart, as I usually do. So you have it right on top. Chapter 18, Pasuk Aleph, verse 1, and God appeared to him. This is today's parsha. I'm putting in the Rashi because we're going to need it soon. Rashi says, to visit the sick, it was the 3rd day of circumcision. God came to see how he's feeling. Fantastic language. Bo HaKadosh Baruch Hu lish'ol b'shlomo, which literally in Hebrew means to check in on him. But then the Rebbe says, look back at last week's portion. Chapter 12, verse 7, chapter 17, verse 1. And God appeared to Abraham. And God appeared to Abraham. Incidentally, it's not yet Abraham. Okay. And in each case, he said a different message. I promise to give your children the land, walk before me and be wholesome, the introduction of the concept of birth. So this is the Rebbe's question. It's like a klotz kasha, it's like an obvious basic question. Why would the boy cry now and not last week? At first, the Rebbe says, well, maybe he didn't learn it last week. Why not? Maybe the one in chapter 17, maybe he didn't learn because that's late in the parsha. He certainly learned the one that's in the beginning of the parsha, as is customary with children, to teach them the beginning of each parsha. So certainly he learned it. Then the Rebbe suggests a few answers. So you see on the screen, I give answer 1, 2, and 3, and then finally answer 4, which the Rebbe embraces. Let's explore them one at a time and why the Rebbe does not accept answers 1, 2, and 3. So the first answer is that the prior portion, he had not gone in to see his Zaydi. The story says that the reason why he went into the Tzemach Tzedek was because it was his birthday. So maybe last week, Lech Lecha, he just did not go in to see his Zaydi. But the Rebbe does not accept that answer for a few reasons. Firstly, in the footnote, the Rebbe writes that the previous Rebbe writes in diaries that the Rebbe Rashab, his father, did go in to see his grandfather during this age period. By the way, how do we know that he was 4 or 5 years old? Because by the time the Rebbe Rashab turned 6, that year the Tzemach Tzedek already passed away. So he had to be 4 or 5. So the previous Rebbe writes that his father was going into his Zaydid at Tzemach Tzedek's room every day for whatever it is that Rebbes do with future Rebbes. Every day. So that's out the window right away. But then the Rebbe asks, well, let's say the boy did not go in to his father during the portion of Lech Lecha and did not discuss it to his grandfather. But now when he goes in and asks this question on Vayera, the Zaidi should have said, that's a great question. And by the way, just so you know, for full disclosure, you could ask the same question on last week's portion where there's not 1 but 2 languages of revelation. That's what an educator would do. And the Tzemach Tzedek does not mention anything about the last week's portion. Not only that, the Tzemach Tzedek's answer is not applicable to last week's revelation. His answer is that don't cry, because Avraham is worthy of revelation because he had a bris at 99 years old. The 2 revelations of Parshas Lech Lecha are not bris related. They were pre-bris. And the first one is entirely unrelated to the bris. The second one is the beginning of the bris commandment. So why did the Tzemach Tzedek answer the question in a way that's satisfactory for all 3 revelations? The Rebbe rejects that question, that answer. No. Answer 1 goes out the window. Answer 2, says the Rebbe, maybe there's another possibility. That the reason why the Rebbe Rashab, the boy, that had no question about last week's revelations, because those were revelations for the sake of a purpose. Because in each case, he gave a message, as you see on the screen. In chapter 12, he appeared to Avraham and said to him, your children will get this land. In chapter 17, he said, and God appeared to Avraham and said, walk before me and be wholesome. So there was a purpose. He revealed himself and said, he didn't just reveal himself. So why should the boy cry that he's not getting revelation? Maybe God has nothing to tell him. God doesn't just show up just for fun. But in this week's portion where the language is, and God appeared to him, and it doesn't say that he said anything. He just came. Why did he come? He came to visit him. He was sick. He came to bless him, whatever. He just revealed himself to him. So the boy says, if the visit is for no reason, come to see me too. I'm also a Yid. Beautiful answer. But the Rebbe rejects this too. Because if the boy learned Rashi, or the boy knows Rashi, or what have you, there was a purpose to this visit, to visit the sick. And therefore, the boy should not be crying. The same way he's not crying why Hashem didn't visit him when he learned about last week's visits to Abraham, because they had a purpose. Hashem didn't just show up. He came to tell him something in both cases of last week. In this week, he also came for a purpose, to visit Abraham because he was sick. The boy wasn't sick, so Hashem didn't come. So that can't be the reason for the difference between last week and this week. So that question is also rejected, that answer number 2. So then the Rebbe suggests a third answer. And that is, based on the Balaturim that says that this revelation was in the merit of the bris. Aha, the boy is crying. He too had a bris. He too should have revelation. When it came to last week's revelation, Hashem reveals himself to Avraham Avinu. Why would he compare himself to Avraham Avinu? He knows Avraham Avinu is the first Jew. He's a big tzaddik. But when he learns that Avraham got a revelation, and the commentaries say, and it's obvious from the text, that's why the Balaturim says it, I guess, that this was B'schus HaMila and the merit of the Mila. Says the boy, I too had a bris. So why don't you come see me? So sweet. But the Rebbe says it doesn't accept that either. The boy was later to be a future Rebbe. The language is that butzin mekatbe yediyah, that even in childhood you could see someone who will be a giant. Clearly the boy understood clearly, beautifully, the difference between someone having a bris at 8 days old and at 99 years old, and clearly he's not going to expect that he should get the same treatment in the merit of his bris that Avraham got in the merit of his bris. So that doesn't make any sense. So answer 3 is out the window. Then the Rebbe presents answer 4, which he accepts as his final answer. And that is, Avram was visited by God here because of the mitzvah Bikur Cholim. Hashem wanted to visit the sick, as Rashi states. And it's in fact from here we learn the mitzvah of visiting the sick. We're supposed to emulate Hashem. And why did he do it? Out of his kindness. Jews are employed are asked to follow Hashem in terms of kindness. Hashem visits the sick, Hashem dresses the naked, etc., etc., buries the dead. And where do we learn that he visits the sick from today's portion? And this is an emulation that we're supposed to emulate Hashem. He was kind. Why do you visit the sick? Out of kindness. So now the Rabbi Rashab is saying, if you're telling me that Hashem is visiting the sick just because he's kind, so why don't you give me also kindness? I'm also a Yid. When you tell me in last week's portion that Hashem revealed himself to Avram is a special big person. Hashem is coming to him and he has messages for him, what have you. But in this week's portion, where there is no purpose other than just because Hashem is kind and that's his way, if someone's sick, Hashem comes. What does kindness mean? Kindness means I just give it to you for no reason because I'm kind. It's not about you deserving it. So the boy says, so why aren't you kind to me? I'm also a Yid. And the Rebbe says that this answer is also hinted in the difference in the text. In last week's portion, Avram is called by name in both cases of revelation. God appeared to Avram, indicating that the revelation was merited by him because he was Avram. Whereas today it just says, and God appeared to him. Says the Rebbe on a pshat level. The reason for that distinction is because the Torah is pointing out that this revelation was not because of Avram's greatness. It doesn't say Hashem appeared to Avram, the great person, the great Abraham. He appeared to him. Why? Because Hashem's kindness. Not because it was earned in some fashion. Now the boy is crying. And what's the answer of the Tzemach Tzedek then? That it's true that this is out of Hashem's kindness, but nevertheless, there's a principle that in order to be worthy of Hashem's great kindnesses, a person has to be a keli, a vessel for it. And in this case, Abraham was a vessel for it by doing what he did, the self-sacrifice, circumcising himself at 99 years old. So therefore, even though, yes, it's kindness and it's God's benevolence, but nevertheless, and it's much more than deserved, I guess, but nevertheless, the person has to do something to earn it. It's compared also to a Talmudic concept that even if you give someone a gift, which is just because of the kindness of your heart, but usually there's a reason why, that the other person did something not to earn it, because then it's not a gift, but to trigger it. They caused you pleasure or what have you. And therefore, similarly, Hashem relates to us that even when Hashem wants to be benevolent and kind, we have to create a situation where we somehow deserve, so to speak, and trigger that. And that's the answer to Tzemach Tzedek, why Avraham deserved it, and he got that revelation. So now we answered the question, why the Rebbe Rashab is crying now, not last week. But then the Rebbe asks about this. But wait a minute. If you're saying now that the reason for the revelation, as Rashi states clearly, we have it on our screen above, to visit the sick, it was the third day of circumcision. And God came to see how he's feeling. And we know the principle of visiting the sick is that it removes 1/60th of your illness. Basically, it starts the process of healing. So if that's the case, this undoes answer 4. That means Hashem's visit did have a purpose. It did have a practical application. It wasn't just because of Hashem's acts of kindness, just because Hashem is a nice guy, but because this person is sick and needs help. The Rebbe Rashab, the boy, is not sick, so why should he expect the visit? Says the Rebbe, this is so beautiful. This is such a sweet, sharp response. Says the Rebbe, no. You're right. Normally, when you visit the sick, it brings a measure of healing and cure. However, in this case, it's clear that that was not the purpose of the visit. Why not? Because right in the next verse, Hashem sends 3 men, which are malachim, and one of them is the angel Raphael, the angel of healing, whose mission is to heal Avraham. So why should Hashem come and begin the process of healing at 160th or what have you? The angel Raphael, Hashem's malach of healing, is going to heal him completely, immediately. So then the question is, what's the purpose of this Bikur Chaylim? Strictly out of kindness. Says the Rebbe, this is meted out in the details and the precision of Rashi. Rashi doesn't just say to visit the sick, period, end of story. Rashi adds, in the name of one of the sages, that it was the 3rd day of circumcision and God came to see how he's doing. Why would Rashi tell that story? Rashi, it's not his style to start quoting people and giving stories. He should just say to visit the sick. Because Rashi is, in this way, answering that question. He didn't visit the sick to remove illness because Raphael is going to do that in the next pasuk. He visited the sick because he wanted to see how he's doing, just because of kindness. Aha! If that's the case, the Rebbe Rashab is crying. That's not fair. If you're being nice, what about me? I'm a Yid, I deserve this. It's extraordinary Sicha. Every Sicha is. To see how the Rebbe is learning a story of Rabbi Seinu Nisienu, our Rabbeim. And how it has to make sense that the 4 or 5-year-old boy, the Rebbe Rashab, did the appropriate thing, and it's meted out in details and nuances in the text, where Avraham's name is not mentioned and where his name is mentioned, and in the language of Rashi that Hashem came to see how he's feeling. This is so special. How the Rebbe teaches us how to look at a Rebbe, at a 4 or 5-year-old Rebbe, and how to look at Rashi and etc. The Rebbe closes this Sicha with the beautiful lesson that the Rebbe takes and said many times. That the lesson of this story, that the Rebbe Rashab, the previous Rebbe, publicized this story, which means that this is something that we're all capable of bringing into our children, a love for Hashem that they're crying at as a child, should be that they want to see Hashem. That's the type of chinuch, type of education we should give our children, and that they are capable of giving them. And the Rebbe says that even though the Rambam writes that when you raise a child, first you should give them things that a child like. First, tell them to do mitzvahs because you'll give them gifts, you'll give them face chocolates, almonds, whatever it was in those days. And then over time, they'll grow into adulthood. They'll eventually serve Hashem out of love. So how come we're saying now that the kid should want to love Hashem because he loves Hashem? He's crying because Hashem's not coming in. Says the Rebbe, times have changed. It's a fantastic thing. The Rebbe says, yeah, traditionally it was impossible to expect that. A child should cry because he doesn't see Hashem. A child cries if you take away his candy or his toy. Says the Rebbe that the Rabbeim have empowered us. And because of the advent of Chassidus and the advent of the fact that the previous Rebbe, a Nasi, told a story about his father, a Nasi, as a child, which means that the generation and all the generations hence are empowered by this Nasi, this boy Nasi, to have such children. And the Rebbe clearly states, we know the concept that times have changed, and that's why many things in Torah change. The Rambam himself, for example, writes that certain medications and certain things that were in human nature back in the day, and now they're changed. The Rebbe writes in the Sichas and brings so many sources. It's footnoted here. And not the Rambam writes. The Rebbe writes and the Achreinim write, etc. That those things change not because Torah changes, God forbid, but because reality changes. So the Rebbe is applying the same thing here. The nature has changed, and we are capable, and our children are capable to really want Mashiach, to really want Hashem, to really want revelation, to really want connection, to want Elokus and Kedusha. The Rebbe says, especially in our generations, when we have the Gilui HaChassidus, where somebody can ask the same question. What do you mean? Now we're closer to Hashem than before. We're the lowest generation. But the same question is, why now do we have so much Chassidus? We're the lowest generations. By the way, not just that Chassidus was revealed in the last generations, but successfully, progressively so. That the Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, translated Chassidus into languages, and the Rebbe revealed such deep things in Chassidus which was never revealed before in his Maamarim. And in encyclopedias that he triggered, I mean, things that the Rebbe brings Chassidus in a way that's unimaginable. Printing all the Hamsheichim, etc., and making it accessible. The Rebbe talked about Braille, Tanya and Braille. So more and more and more, Why? It's the darkest time, and the answer is precisely so. When it's dark, you need light, says the Rebbe. That's one of the two explanations that the Rebbe always traditionally gives of why Chassidus is revealed in the latter, darkest generations. The second explanation being as a precursor to the time of Mashiach, when all we'll do is learn Chassidus all day long and know Hashem. But the other being that the darkness is the time Adarabah, on the contrary, that's why there's so much light. So the Rebbe says that that's why in these times, in a sense, tremendous darkness, and we don't have to explain why. We're talking about a period after Gimel Tammuz, and especially the world that we're living in now, which so desperately needs the Rebbe. And says the Rebbe, but in that place is when there is the greater possibility, as we're discussing here, for that type of chinuch for a child. And the Rebbe further says, but the Rebbe, everything is precise. Not only is this something related to us now, but it is revealed specifically through the Rebbe Rashab, known as the Rambam of Chassidus. He's the one who created Temchei Temimim, which basically means that a yeshiva bacher learns Chassidus and Nigla, so to speak, in the same program. Before the Rebbe Rashab, people always learned Chassidus, but it wasn't learned by most people, with the exception of the great minds. It wasn't learned certainly by yeshiva boys on the same level of understanding, with a question and an answer and appreciation, where the human mind can understand it. No, it's a spiritual thing. And the neshama understands it, and you get moved by it emotionally, a little bit intellectually. Obviously, there were exceptions. There were great maskilim, but the average bacher in yeshiva, he learns Gemara and he learns halacha. Chassidus is something that you learn on Thursday night. You learn, you experience it. You don't really learn it. Shab opened up the floodgates by creating the yeshiva Temchei Temimim, that Nigla and Chassidus are really on the same page. You learn Chassidus like Nigla, says the Rebbe, with the same clarity and understanding, and vice versa. They're connected. It's Teira Achas, and therefore, says the Rebbe, it's fitting that the Rebbe Rashab, the founder of Temchei Temimim, who brings Chassidus down to real life, to the human mind, as the Rebbe explains in detail in other Sichas, he's the one who brings home this message that the kid, not just the Rebbe Rashab, any kid in our generation is capable of feeling the desire to see Hashem. And I think the Rebbe expects it certainly of the grown kids, us, because, as the Rebbe said many times, a child doesn't have to be only an age. And why? Because this is the age of Temchei Temimim. This is the age that Chassidus is like Nigla, that the knowledge of Hashem, if you want to, makes sense. It's real. So why shouldn't I want it? It's good. It's just as good as the candy and the chocolate. We want Mashiach now.